This is Healthy Souls with Father Nicholas Lowe, helping you to live a Christ-filled life in today's world. Father Nicholas is the pastor of St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Jacksonville, Florida.
Good to have all of you here with us. As you all know, we're going to be leaving some members of our church. About 25 of our members of our community are going to be going on a pilgrimage. We leave this Tuesday to go to Jerusalem. We're excited about this. We've been planning this trip for over a year now, and we have been working tirelessly to make sure that all the events and all the programs and all the sites that we're going to visit are going to be extraordinary. Obviously, most of our community is not going to be with us. Hopefully we'll all be here next Sunday. But I will tell you this, we are taking you with us in spirit. Wherever we go, whether we're at St. George's Church, looking at the tomb of St. George, or at the birthplace of Christ in Bethlehem, or at Mary's house, or if we are at the tomb of Christ, I can assure you this, we will be praying for you. Just be assured of that. What we may do, we'll keep you guys posted on this if we can. This is about a 7-hour difference between here and Israel. But on next Sunday, midnight service, in other words, so about midnight their time, we will be having a midnight liturgy at the tomb of Christ. If we can, and if the internet is good, we might do a Facebook Live of us doing the liturgy there, which will be about 5 o'clock in the afternoon here, just so you guys know. You'll be able to pick it up through our Saint on the Divine Facebook page. I know that many of you are on that. Many of you may not have it, but if you do, that's the way that you guys can stay connected. Second announcement I wanted to share with you also is today we are serving meals at the City Rescue Mission. I know that many of you know that every month we have, this is part of the ministries of our community, staple ministries that we have, like this, City Rescue Mission, also Ronald McDonald House, also making prayer shawls and all those good things. We would love to have you involved in attending and being part of this ministry that we do at City Rescue Mission. Jacksonville has one of the highest homeless rates in the country. And so I tell you that because we are not a church just for ourselves. As we talked about last week, we are a church not only for ourselves, but for the world. And so there's ways that you can do this. If you're interested in getting involved in this and attending and making a difference in the lives of people, you can call our church office. Tony Atanasio. Tony, can you wave your hand like that? Tony Atanasio is, along with his beautiful wife, Roxanne, oversee this ministry in our community. Strongly encourage you either speak with them or call the church office. We'll give you guys all the details. All right, so last week we began a brand new sermon series, and we're calling it Summer at St. John the Divine. And basically, during the sermon series, we're hoping to cover a multitude of different topics. There's no general theme that every single sermon, every single week will have. They're just different topics that we hope will help you in your walk of faith. And so last week was all about sharing our faith. And today I want to talk to you about something that I think every one of us struggles with. And that is the need to be in control. It would be outstanding, wouldn't it be, if we never had a bad thing happen in our lives? Like if your friend called you and they said, hey, how's your day doing? You're like, it's awesome. I mean, woohoo, it's absolutely amazing. Or if they said to you, how's your marriage? How's your husband doing? And you're like, oh my gosh, my husband is so great. He woke up this morning, washed the clothes, washed the dishes, and made dinner all today just for me. It would be great if you said, well, how's your children doing? And you were like, yes, my children read the entire book of James and memorized it in 2 days. I mean, it would be great if life was just like that. But the reality is that life isn't that way. And for many of us, we could be listening to a sermon on Sunday morning with Father Nick, and then on Tuesday, our life can be in chaos. And I want you to remember me telling you this, that a true measure of your walk of faith, of how well you're doing in your own walk of faith, is not how you answer those easy questions in the good times. It's how you deal with those difficult questions in the bad times. This is what happened to me. I'm just going to be open and honest and give you an open confession today. In February of 2010, I had just been a priest for a couple of years, and everything by God's grace was going great in our church. We were doing great ministries. We were building our community. God was just working in our community. We had just in our own immediate family, we were raising George, and then we welcomed our daughter, Gabriella. Just couldn't have been better. I remember giving a sermon on a Sunday where everyone was excited. We were all just on the same wavelength. But that Sunday, right after service, I was checking my phone, and on my cell phone, there were about 10 missed calls and one text message. You've heard me tell you that when I opened the text message, it was a text message from my sister, Stephanie, who lives in Birmingham with her husband, Bobby. They had a son, his name was Andrew. And Andrew was an extraordinary young man. Andrew, when he was born, everything was perfect and everything was great. But we got a text message that said, from my sister, Nick, get to Birmingham now. And we didn't know what was going on. We called Birmingham to see what was going on. And my sister Stephanie had said that we took Andrew. He was running a fever. We just simply took him to the hospital to make sure that he was okay. While he was in the hospital, he had ended up having pneumonia. And not only did he have pneumonia, while he was there, he contracted what was then called the H1N1 virus. You all might remember that virus. It was very deadly at that time. He was so sick that they had put him in the pediatric ICU. And when I got there, we didn't know what to expect. We walked into this place, and I remember, I'll never forget, the doctor pulling me aside and saying, "Father, I'm worried about Andrew. I'm not sure if Andrew is going to pull through this." It was almost as if our world was collapsing. Just a few hours later on Sunday, everything was okay. On Monday, we're dealing with the potential loss of my nephew at 18 months old. We sat there, and like many of you, maybe you might have reacted this way, but we were on WebMD. We were trying to find out how we could assist those doctors and those nurses in dealing with this H1N1 virus. We were trying to find out every amount of data that we could find to assist them. And we'd sit there in that pediatric ICU waiting room just figuring out cognitively how could we help them save Andrew. Every day, though, his health was getting worse and worse, so much so that he was on a ventilator. And I'll never forget, one night we were there, we were all beaten down. It just seemed like a day of just one cascading negative event after another cascading negative event. A lady walked into the pediatric room, and she walked in and she had a basket in her hands. And she went around and she said, "I'm just from the local church here. I just came to give you guys some food. I want to feed you guys." And we were like many of you, when you're going through all this, the last thing you want to do is actually eat. And we were all like, no, we really don't want to eat. And she was like, no, you really need to eat. And she came up to me and she says, "Father, you need to eat." And I said, no, I'm fine. She's like, "Father, no, you need to eat." So I grabbed what was like a granola bar from this basket. As I was looking at this granola bar, every one of those little snacks that were in that basket had little sayings on it. Listen to the saying that I picked up on that granola bar. It said this: "Starve your fears, feed your faith." Feed your faith, starve your fear. You see, for me, even as a priest, all I was trying to do was trying to control this situation, how I can make it better, how I can try to resolve this situation that was going on with Andrew. But that message of feed your faith, starve your fear. Feed your faith, starve your fear just kept coming over us. We that night prayed in that ICU unit with this woman who came from a local church to simply give us some food to eat. And by God's grace, 2 days later, Andrew began to make a recovery. I would call it a medical miracle, God's miracle in their life. And today, Andrew is doing outstandingly well. But what's my point? So often, we're trying to control this situation. And what God is telling all of us to be and to do is feed your faith, not your fears. Let those be starved. You know, it's interesting in the Bible, and I've shared this with you in the past. If you were to take our St. on the Divine app and simply just go into the online Bible portion of that app, and you just simply put in there this phrase, "Fear not," it'll be the number one verse that is downloaded. In other words, there are more, the phrase of "fear not," don't be afraid, is one of the most often used Bible verses by God. Imagine that. Why did God spend so much time telling all of us in His book about not being afraid, of letting go of control, a fear not. Why? Because that's one of the biggest struggles that we have. All of us have a desire to control things. But you can't control while at the same time asking God to control. What God is asking us to do is to surrender to Him. You might say, well, Father Nick, doesn't the Bible say God helps those who help themselves? No, it doesn't say that. It's one of the most popular myths in the entire Bible that people oftentimes cite. God never says He'll help those who help themselves. He says that He is the strength. He is our life. And we draw our power not from ourselves, but from Him. We have to let Him be in control. And so how do we, as we journey in this world that is so difficult, so out of control, how do we deal with that in our own walk of faith? Let me give you three things, three principles that I believe if you impart them in part of your life, that it will help you in your own journey when you do have those Mondays or Tuesdays where you're dealing with those difficult situations. Number one, remember this. Life happens. I think so often we forget that we live in a broken world. If you don't believe me, watch the news at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. Look at the programs that are on TV now. Go out and watch a movie recently. See what's on TV. See what we're being fed on a day-to-day basis. To make matters worse, we see a world in which we see cancer, drugs, and disease plaguing our society. Why is that? Because we live in a broken world, an out-of-control world. And because of that, we will continuously see unfair, bad things happening to good people. Life happens. Number two, you feed your faith knowing that God always wins. Like, you have to know that. You know, I look in the Old Testament, there's a story about Joseph. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own family. Don't raise your hand, but have you ever had a family member that just did you wrong? 17 years in prison. He never lost faith. In fact, after 17 years, his own brothers would come and ask for forgiveness. I look at St. Peter. Peter said, no, I don't know Jesus. I have no idea who you're talking about. No idea who that person is. You would have thought that God would have said, you're going to deny me? No chance in making it in this life. 40 days later, he's preaching in front of thousands of people and baptizing them. Look at the life of Christ. I think about Holy Thursday. Here, Jesus is hung on the cross and the devil's going, woohoo, he's dead. God is dead. Friday, nothing happened. He's dead. And we take so much of that for granted. For many of us, we would think, wow, things are out of control. But God always wins. What happened on the third day? The devil got a wake-up call, and he was destroyed. What's my point? God always prevails. And number three, perhaps the strongest one that we have to do, and this is probably where most of us struggle at, by the way. Listen to this. Your walk is your witness. How you deal with those difficult times in your life is a witness to people. Listen, I say this totally respectfully. People are not going to watch you or be moved by you when everything is going great in your life. But they'll be moved by you if they see how you're dealing with the difficulties in your life, because they know that He is at the center of your life. Look at people like Miss Margaret. If Miss Margaret's health was absolutely perfect and you just heard her say glory to God all the time, it'd be great. It would inspire us. But what really touches our heart is when we see someone who's in chronic pain and illness and still has the energy to say, glory to God. And not just say it, but mean it. I think about people that we have in our own lives, of people that have gone through difficulties and yet can muster up that energy. Why? Because their walk is their witness. I leave you with this. When I was growing up, I've told you guys that I was a very short and scrawny kid, and oftentimes, for a short and scrawny kid, I always wanted to play the sports that the tall, bigger people would play, like football and like basketball, and never could make those teams when I was in junior high and high school. And so oftentimes I would play in the neighborhood, and I would play in our house that we had. It was in Arlington. We had a very large side lawn, and that lawn was so large that we could have a full football game there. And some of my friends, I'll give you some of their names. Obviously, my brother was out there playing with us, but our neighbor, his name was Bubba. Bubba would come out and play with us. We loved when Bubba would come and play with us. And we had another kid down the street. His name was Chris, and he'd come and play with us. And Michael, they'd all come and play with us. We were all the same, scrawny, skinny, short kids that never make it on any high school or, for that matter, junior high football team. But we loved to play football. Now, we didn't play with the hard football because that was just too hard for our hands to catch. So we played with the Nerf football, and that was a great thing for all of us to do. And so we would just play. But whenever we would play, we would always play, but we would be fearful of the Brooks boys. The Brooks boys, those were the big boys that lived a few houses down from where we lived. And whenever they came out, they were much bigger than we were. They were taller than we were. And whenever they were out, they would just love to play with us. In fact, oftentimes when we would play with them, reluctantly we would have to play with them. The score would be like 48-0. If we were doing great, it'd be like 36-0. It was just always, we would always avoid whenever they would play. But Bubba had an older brother, and Bubba's older brother was named Scooter. Scooter was a big boy. Scooter, whenever he would play with us, we used to get so excited. In fact, whenever we would see Scooter, we would just man up. We would feel like all happy. Even though we were scrawny, skinny kids, we'd put our chest out. We were just ready to play. And whenever Scooter would see us, he'd come in and say, all right, let's get into the huddle. And we'd get into a huddle, and he'd say, all right, this is the plan. You're going to do the flea flicker, Nick, and then you over here are going to go deep, and then you're going to run the ball. He'd give us different plans that we would do. And inevitably, almost every single time, Scooter, while being in that huddle, would teach us how to win. I think this is in many ways just how our life is. Life sometimes can be like a game. Sometimes you can have people who may not want to wish you that well, and makes your life sometimes out of control. Maybe the cards are constantly against you, like you just have one negative event after another negative event happening in your life. Maybe for some of you, you feel like honestly that you're always losing. Can I just give you a word of encouragement? What matters most is who is in your huddle. Who's the one encouraging you? Who is the one that's telling you what it can be? What made the difference when I was playing football was not us. We were still the same old players, skinny, scrawny players playing football. What made a difference was Scooter. What made a difference was who we had in our huddle. And I want to encourage you, make sure that God is always in your huddle. Remember him always telling you that most famous phrase, fear not. Go out recognizing that God yearns for us to recognize that life happens because this world, it is out of control. But he is in control. And that our walk, yes, is our witness in how we walk in our faith. So go out. And I'm giving you a little food for your soul. Starve your fears. Feed your faith.
We invite you to join Father Nick and his wife, Dr. Roxanne Lowe, on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month for their Healthy Minds, Healthy Souls call-in show at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on Ancient Faith Talk.